You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's August the 21st, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Education and News. I'm live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. As you notice, I'm alone. Cindy is still off training on her psychedelic medicines, and when she returns, she'll be back. That's not till the end of September. Until then, you just got me, or who knows, maybe the odd time I'll have the occasional joint host that will fill in for Cindy. But other than that, today in the news, I've got some studies. Let's see what we got here. Some psychedelic studies on postpartum depression. Does medical cannabis use result in more cautious driving? We've got a report coming into us from the Calgary Herald on psilocybin research. They're looking for some recruits. So if you're looking at getting involved in some psilocybin studies, I'm going to have some news for you there. And we also got some cannabis use and surgical wound healing when it comes to cannabis. So let's get at her, and we'll get into those stories throughout the next hour. And here we go. First story of the day comes to me from Marijuana Moment. Headline there says, more young adults are opting for cannabis drinks over alcohol at after-work happy hours, according to the latest poll. It says that younger Americans are increasingly using cannabis-infused beverages as a substitute for alcohol, with 1 in 3 millennials and Gen Z workers choosing THC drinks over booze for after-work activities like happy hours. Now, the survey from the Drug Rehab USA assessed the recreational preferences of 1,000 employed adults, finding more evidence that as the cannabis legalization movement achieves greater success, and as awareness of alcohol-related harms has spread, a significant portion of those generations are opting for cannabis over booze. All told, 66% of American adults say they tried alcohol alternatives over the past 6 months, and 24% of respondents says they're at least partially replaced alcohol with non-alcohol or cannabis-based beverages. They try that trend is being led by millennials, as I mentioned, and Gen Zs. Now, they say that to unwind after work, 45% drink alcohol, while 24% said use nicotine, 20% turn to cannabis, and 16% choose alcohol alternatives like mocktails, non-alcoholic beer, or CBD. Now, according to Drug Rehab USA, they say that when it comes to winding down after a long day, Americans are reaching for a mix of familiar comforts and emerging alternatives. While alcohol still dominates, the competition between nicotine and cannabis shows how habits are evolving across generations. And it says that after-work rituals are no longer limited to nightly drink or even to alcohol at all. From THC-infused beverages to nicotine pouches and non-alcoholic alternatives, today's habits reflect a broader redefinition of what it means to unwind. While motivations vary, stress, routine, social connections, the through line is clear. Americans are turning to consumable rituals to draw a line between work and rest. For many of those rituals begin with the hour and recur multiple times a week. Now, the survey's findings largely track with other research assessing emerging trends. For example, a recent rodent study determined that CBD reduces rates of binge drinking and alcohol blood concentrations. Results of a separate study published in the journal Molecular Psychiatry also indicate that a single 800 milligram dose of CBD can help manage certain alcohol cravings among people with alcohol use disorder, supporting the use of cannabis component as a potential treatment option for problem drinkers. Now, federally funded research into the effects of cannabis on alcohol use that was published in May also found that people who use cannabis immediately before drinking subsequently consumed fewer alcoholic beverages and reported lower cravings of alcohol. The study follows a separate survey analysis published in March that found that 3 in 4 young adults reported substituting cannabis for alcohol at least once per week, a fast emerging trend that reflects the rapid expansion of the hemp product marketplace. Now, the report from Bloomberg Intelligence found that across various demographics, cannabis is increasingly being used as an alternative to alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. A lot of repeated stuff here, people. The findings were largely consistent with growing body of studies indicating that cannabis, whether federally legal hemp or still prohibited cannabis, is being utilized as a substance for many Americans amid the reform movement. An earlier survey from YouGov, for example, found the majority of Americans believe regular alcohol consumption is more harmful than regular cannabis use. Even so, more adults said they personally prefer drinking alcohol to consuming cannabis despite the health risk. A separate poll released in January determined that more than half of cannabis consumers say they drink less alcohol or none at all after using cannabis. Yet another survey, which was supported by the National Institute of Drug Abuse, released in December, found that young adults are nearly 3 times more likely to use cannabis than alcohol on a daily or near daily basis. The poll provided more granular age-specific findings than a similar report published last year, finding that more Americans overall smoke cannabis on a daily basis than drink alcohol every day, and that alcohol drinkers are more likely to say they would benefit from limiting their use than cannabis consumers are. Now, another survey or study published in the journal Addiction last year similarly found that there are more U.S. adults who use cannabis daily than who drink alcohol every day. And in December, the BI also published the results of a survey indicating the substitution of cannabis for alcohol is soaring as the state-level legalization movement expands and relative perceptions of harm shift. A significant portion of Americans also said in that poll that they substitute cannabis for cigarettes and painkillers. Another analysis from last September projected that the expansion of the cannabis legalization movement will continue to pose a significant threat to the alcohol industry, citing survey data that suggests more people are using cannabis as a substitute for alcohol beverages such as beer and wine. And another study on the impact of cannabis consumption on people's use of other drugs that was released in December suggested for many, cannabis may act as a less dangerous substitute, allowing people to reduce their intake of substances such as alcohol, methamphetamine, and opioids like morphine. A study out of Canada, where cannabis is federally legal, found that legalization was associated with a decline in beer sales, suggesting a substitution effect. The analysis compared with other recent survey data that more broadly looked at American views on cannabis versus alcohol. For example, a Gallup survey found that respondents view cannabis as less harmful than alcohol, tobacco, and nicotine vapes, and more adults now smoke cannabis than cigarettes. A separate survey released by the American Psychiatric Association and Morning Consult last June also found that Americans consider marijuana to be significantly less dangerous than cigarettes, alcohol, and opioids, and they say cannabis is less addictive than each of those substances, as well as technology. Meanwhile, a leading alcohol industry association is calling on Congress to dial back language in the House Committee approval spending bill that would ban most consumable hemp products instead of proposing to maintain the legalization of naturally derived cannabinoids from the crop and only prohibit synthetic items. So there you go. more people, more of the younger people, are switching over to alcohol or non-alcohol beverages, and that includes them converting over to the cannabis beverages. So that is a good thing, as far as I'm concerned. So, all right, moving on to the next story. This one here, it comes to me from Vocal Media. It says psychedelics for postpartum depression, a new hope. It says postpartum depression affects many new mothers, leaving them feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and emotionally drained. While traditional treatments like therapy and medication can help, emerging research explores innovative approaches. Psychedelics, once considered taboo, are now gaining attention for the potential to provide rapid relief and emotional support for mothers struggling with PPD. So what is PPD? Postpartum depression is more than the common baby blues. It is a serious mood disorder that can develop during pregnancy or within the first year after childbirth. Symptoms include persistent sadness, anxiety, irritability, trouble bonding with your baby, and difficulty managing daily tasks. Unlike temporary mood swings, PPD can last weeks or months, significantly affecting daily life. It arises from a mix of hormonal changes, sleep deprivation, stress, and personal or family history of mental health disorders. Sometimes early recognition and professional care are critical for recovery. Everyday strategies like prioritizing sleep, balanced nutrition, and social connection can help, though some mothers may require additional treatment. Understanding PPD helps reduce stigma and encourages mothers to seek help without feeling judged. Now, traditional treatments focused on therapy and medication. Psychotherapy, including cognitive behavior therapy and interpersonal therapy, provides a safe space to explore emotions, develop coping skills, and improve communication with loved ones. Medications such as antidepressants or hormonal therapies can stabilize mood, though they may take weeks to show some full effect. Emerging digital solutions are also gaining traction. Studies on AI-based mental health tools illustrate innovative approaches to support mood and well-being. AI Safety explores how these therapies are assessed for safety, offering useful comparisons to the rigorous testing of new interventions like psychedelics. Despite these options, some mothers find traditional methods slow or insufficient. Side effects, accessibility, and personal preference can limit effectiveness. This gap has prompted research into novel treatments, including psychedelic compounds, which show promise in rapidly alleviating depressive symptoms and improving emotional connection with their child. Psychedelics are substances that alter perception, mood, and cognition. While often associated with recreational use, certain compounds are now studied for therapeutic purposes. Common examples include ketamine, psilocybin, and newer molecules designed for medical use. Ketamine, traditionally an anesthetic, has been repurposed for medical health treatment. Ketamine therapy is administered in controlled settings and can provide rapid relief for depression and anxiety, even in postpartum contexts. Unlike standard antidepressants, a single or a few sessions can significantly reduce symptoms. These substances are used under professional supervision, often with preparatory and integration sessions to ensure emotional safety and long-term effect. Researchers are exploring how psychedelics can reset neural patterns, promote emotional openness, and support self-reflection, making them a unique complement to conventional therapies. As far as the benefits, they say that psychedelics offer several potential benefits for mothers struggling with PPD. One major advantage is rapid symptom relief. Unlike traditional antidepressants, which may take weeks, compounds like ketamine can reduce depressive symptoms within hours or days, helping mothers reconnect with their babies sooner. These treatments can also enhance emotional processing and self-awareness. For temporary altering perception, psychedelics may allow mothers to confront difficult feelings, release guilt, and cultivate self-compassion. This emotional reset supports healthier bonding with their child and improves overall well-being. Integrating psychedelics with lifestyle practices amplifies results. Combining treatment with daily habits such as mindfulness, exercise, and structured sleep routines reinforces mental stability and resilience. Everyday practices complement the therapeutic effects, ensuring lasting improvements beyond clinical sessions. Preliminary studies also suggest psychedelics may reduce anxiety and rumification, common challenges in PPD. Mothers often report better mood regulation, clearer thinking, and renewed motivation to engage in daily activities. These benefits highlight why psychedelics are emerging as a promising adjunctive option for holistic postpartum mental health care. So how do they work? Psychedelics interact with brain chemistry in unique ways. Ketamine, for example, modulates glutamate and neurotransmitter involved in mood regulation and neuroplasticity. By enhancing neural connections, ketamine therapy helps the brain reset maladaptive patterns linked to depression and anxiety. Other psychedelics, like psilocybin, affect serotonin receptors, promoting emotional openness and cognitive flexibility. This temporary state can help mothers process trauma, challenge negative thought patterns, and gain perspective on stressful experiences, much like rebooting a computer to fix glitches. Excuse me. Now, the therapeutic setting is crucial. Sessions include preparation, guided administration, and integration afterwards. Integration involves reflecting on insights gained and translating them into actionable changes in daily life, maximizing benefits while maintaining safety. Combining these treatments with supportive routines, mindfulness, and self-care strengthens outcomes. The goal is not just symptom reduction, but fostering long-term emotional resilience, better coping strategies, and healthier mother-infant connections. Now, recent research highlights psychedelics' potential for postpartum depression. The Reconnect Phase 2 trial studied RE-104, a novel psychedelic in mothers up to 15 months postpartum. Participants received a single dose along with preparatory integration sessions. Results showed rapid remission in depression symptoms for many, demonstrating promise for faster acting interventions compared to traditional medications. Ketamine has been extensively studied, showing significant reductions in postpartum depression rates within hours. Preliminary psilocybin studies, though focused on general depression, indicate long-lasting improvements in mood and emotional regulation. Digital therapies also illustrate the trend towards innovative mental health solutions. The AI study demonstrates how novel interventions, even digital ones, can provide measurable benefits, reinforcing the validity of experimental approaches like psychedelics. Now, these trials emphasize safety, controlled dosing, and professional guidance. Researchers continue to explore optimal administration schedules, dosage, and integration strategies. While still early, the growing evidence supports psychedelics as a potential transformation adjacent in postpartum depression care, complementing therapy, lifestyle strategies, and traditional medications. Of course, there's always some cautions, and despite these promises, psychedelics are not suitable for everyone. I completely agree. There's not cheeseburgers aren't for everybody either. Individuals with a history of psychosis, bipolar disorder, or uncontrolled medical conditions should avoid these treatments. Professional supervision is essential to reduce risks such as disorientation, emotional stress, or rare adverse reactions. Mothers considering these therapies must also consider the impact on breastfeeding and infant safety. Some compounds may require a temporary pause or pumping protocols to avoid exposure. Psychedelics should be viewed as a complementary, not standalone solutions, and practical everyday solutions can enhance safety and effectiveness. Structured routines, proper nutrition, and self-care reinforce resilience and provide accessible tools for mothers who may not be suitable candidates for psychedelic treatment. A balanced approach ensures well-being while exploring emerging therapies responsibly. There you go. Good stuff. We always like to get news like that where psychedelics or something can help mothers with their newborns and their quality of life. So good stuff. Less stuff like that I like to highlight and bring out. So alrighty, on to the next story. This one here is coming to me from the Hemp Gazette, and the headline on it says, does medical cannabis use result in more cautious driving? What do you think? Let's find out. An Australian study investigating the impacts of THC oil on medicinal cannabis patients' driving capabilities has revealed some interesting results that need to be interpreted with caution. The study, by researchers from the University of Queensland and the University of Sunshine Coast, involved validated video-based tests in 41 participants. Participants underwent 2 testing sessions, one for baseline and one for post-consumption, approximately 1 week apart. The participants were assessed for hazard perception, skill performance, driving-related risk-taking behavior, self-perceived hazard perception, skill performance, and self-perceptions of driving skills and safety. Now, prior to the post-consumption session, participants consumed 10.8 milligrams of THC and 16.05 milligrams of CBD. The researchers found hazard perception skill performance did not significantly decline from baseline to post-consumption, but the way the participants perceived performance did. They were unable to accurately self-assess their performances. However, this was regardless on whether they had consumed THC. So that means the people who hadn't, they also had a problem with it as well. The study also found medicinal cannabis patients engaged in compensatory strategies, such as reducing their speed and increasing their following distance following the consumption of THC. But gap acceptance behavior, which is a gap in traffic participants would be willing to pull out into, remain unchanged. So people who consumed cannabis, they reduced their speed and increased their following distance. That sounds to me as if they are safer drivers. To me, anyways. As usual, more research is needed, and these results certainly shouldn't be seen as any sort of encouragement to drive while impaired. And in the conclusions, the researchers stated, as the uptake of medicinal cannabis increases throughout Australia and other jurisdictions globally, developing a comprehensive understanding of the acute effects of THC on both objective and perceived driving performance will be crucial for guiding future road safety legislation in this area. The study has been published in the journal Pharmacology. The issue of THC in driving is a hot button topic in Australia. In most Australian jurisdictions, driving with any detectable level of THC in the bloodstream is illegal and can lead to a loss of license, even if there is no impairment. Given THC can remain detectable for up to weeks after consumption, medical cannabis use basically means patients are subjected to a self-imposed ban to avoid risk of prosecution. Now, another study by the same research group looked at the acute effects of medically prescribed oral and vaporized THC on cognitive functions important for driving. So there you go. There's actually, I look at that, there's some good news in there because of the fact that it says that people who consume cannabis for medicinal purposes, as I said, slower drivers, better distances between. They're not tailgating, as a lot of aggressive drivers do. So that to me is a good thing. And Here in Canada, we have a 5 nanogram limit of THC in your blood, but yet we don't have anything that connects that to being impaired. That's just an arbitrary number that has been put into law. That's it. All right, gonna move on to the next story, and this one is going to be coming to me from, where are we coming from? This is coming to me from the Calgary Herald. And the headline on it says, Calgary-based psilocybin research on alcohol use disorder needs more people to do the study. Looking for something to do, people? We got to research. It's looking for some help. When neuroscientist Leah Mayo joined the University of Calgary as the Parker Psychedelic Research Chair, her job was the first of its kind, with the research only funded thanks to a $3 million luminous donation. Now, the team has reached another first, finally receiving federal dollars towards research in psychedelics, in this case, psilocybin. 3 studies on the so-called magic mushrooms have been funded across Canada, with Mayo's team tackling potential effects the psychedelics might have on dealing with alcohol use disorder. More than a year after starting recruitment, however, she's still looking for patients to fill out the program's 128-slot roster. Recruitments for randomized studies always take longer than you think it should, says David Hodgkins, a clinical psychologist working on the project. Now, according to the World Health Organization, roughly 7% of the world's population suffers from substance use disorder. With multiple in-person sessions required, participants are limited to the surrounding Calgary area. With an estimated population of 1.6 million, that would mean roughly 112,000 in the area that might fit the bill for the study. However, Hodgkins said the team puts in significant effort to ensure participants are the right fit. The initial assessment is quite detailed, Hudson says. It takes time and personnel. Even beginning trials, as recruitment is still underway, is likely to be some time before the research presents any final findings. Studies like this takes an average of 3 to 4 years, Mayo says, adding the same quite large for the field. The trials themselves are extensive and combine the use of magic mushrooms with psychiatric treatment. Psilocybin is used after initial session with follow-up psychotherapy afterwards. Patients are involved for roughly 3 months, with researchers continuing contact even after the scope of direct involvement. And Hodgins' role is to create a through line in the therapeutic portion, with enough consistency in its delivery that it can be replicated in future work. That isn't as simple as it might sound, given the differing individual needs of any given patient. That's the careful balance you have to achieve, Hudson says. The team solution is a sort of therapy manual with a number of different options and pathways available to those speaking with patients, with all options fitting within a wider framework. The team believes strongly in the combination mushroom and therapy treatment. Mayo says that we're all really optimistic about psychedelics for this type of therapy. Now, research at New York University suggested in 2022 that the combination of psilocybin and psychotherapy produced robust decreases in percentage of heavy drinking days. However, Mayo said the research team is doing its best not to give potential patients unreal expectations. One of the things that we really focus on is trying to not to overpromise and underdeliver, Mayo goes on to say. Patients often come for the psilocybin treatment after trying multiple other options and continuing to struggle, she says. There is a lot of potential there, but it's not going to be the answer to everything, and it's not going to be the answer for everyone. Correct. I say the same thing about cannabis. Now, those interested in applying for the study can do so online. There is a link here Now, unfortunately, because this is mainstream media news, I cannot post this on the Psychedelics and Cannabis educational Facebook page. So I'm going to suggest that you, if you're interested, look up this article in the Calgary Herald and see if you can find it. If you can, and to get involved, then why not? They're looking for help. So, okay. I'm halfway through. It's break time, as you know. That means it's time for me to take a little medication break and for you to hear from the voices that help us, from the people, to help make our voices louder so that you can get the news and get some information that may be helpful to you or somebody that you love. Other than that, we'll see you in about 3 minutes.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford, Ontario.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hey, I'm back. I'm live. And you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis educational news. All right. I have got 4 more stories to cover over the next half an hour or less. So let's get at her. There we go. First story comes to us from StratCan. Headline says, Canadian cannabis prices leveling off. The consumer price of recreational cannabis in Canada continues to decline in 2025, although at a less steep decline than in previous years. Consumer prices for adult use recreational cannabis declined by 0.6% in July of 2025 compared to the month prior, and by 2.4% from July of 2024 to July of 2025. The Consumer Price Index is an indicator of changes in consumer prices experienced by Canadians. It measures price change by comparing over time the cost of a fixed basket of goods and services. For cannabis, the baseline price was established as $100 as of December 2018. In the first months of legalization. Since then, the price has primarily declined, except for few small and brief monthly or bi-monthly increases. While the first few years of legal cannabis saw prices drop by about 8 to 9% a year, prices since December 2023 have decreased by under 1%. By December 2019, the price index for non-medical cannabis in Canada had dropped to 90.5. A year later, in December 2020, it was 83.8. In December 21, it was 76.5. In December of 22, it was 74.6. And by December of 2023, it was 71.9. And December 2024, it was 71.2. You can see it right there on the graph, going down. Meanwhile, medical prices have remained relatively steady. So patients are paying a higher price than a recreational consumer, with no price changes between June and July of 2025, and just a 0.7 decline from July of 2024 to July of 2025. Medical prices hit their lowest price point in March of 2022. That gave them a score of 73 out of that 100, before increasing to 84.9 in February 2024. Prices have only declined slightly since then. Boy, that's a big jump in those 2-year period. Let's see what else. It says the number of Canadians assessing cannabis from licensed cannabis producers or through personal or designated growers continues to decline in 2024. The most recent figures from Health Canada show the number of medical client registrations with federal licensed sellers in Canada has continued to decline, and a 3% decline from June of 2024 to September of 2024. The figures show a continued decline in these registering to access cannabis for medical purposes from federally licensed cannabis producers since those numbers peaked at 2019 and 2020. This decline began to reverse from the end of 2023 to mid-2024 before declining again. Cannabis sales for non-medical recreational cannabis in Canada again reached a new high in May of 2025 based on the most recent sale figures from Stats Canada. I wonder if those numbers are going up because of the fact that, partially due to the fact that patients' numbers are going down and people are just going to the store to get it instead of buying it through the mail and getting it that way. Just go to the store. If they can find something there that works, they just go to the store and get it. And that it was sort of the question that the government put out a couple of years ago. Could the stores replace the medical program? Is it working that the patients are slowly switching over and that will reduce the program? Who knows? We'll find out. Now, the total sales in Canada in May 2025 reached $482.3 million, surpassing the previous high of $468 million set in December of 2024. These sales numbers are seasonally adjusted. Unadjusted figures for May of 2025 are slightly higher at $485.4 million. The total adjusted sales across Canada since cannabis was legalized in 2018 through May of 2025 are $25.2 billion. So there you go. The prices are still going down, but just not going down as quickly, and see what happens over time. All right, moving on to the next article. Another study. And this one's coming to me from the Hemp Gazette again. And in it says that the study, cannabis use in surgical wound healing. Let's see what this says, because I haven't seen anything about this. So, in what's described as a first-of-a-kind study, no wonder I haven't heard much about it before. The University of Oklahoma researchers are seeking to determine if cannabis use affects recovery from the wounds associated with head and neck cancer surgery. According to the USA's National Foundation for Cancer Research, head and neck cancers account for roughly 4% of all new cancer diagnoses annually in the U.S. Last year, an estimated 71,110 new cases were diagnosed, and approximately 16,000 deaths are expected. But even for those who survive, the ongoing impacts can be life-changing. Reconstruction after tumor removal can dramatically alter appearance and impact psychological functions such as swallowing and breathing. Many cancer patients use cannabis to manage symptoms, such as side effects associated with treatment for their condition, but there's little information on how this use affects the healing of wounds. Now, according to Lurders, I can't pronounce their last name, I'm sorry, but they're a doctor. They're the principal investigator and professor of otolaryngology. I'm going to assume the larynx and stuff like that in your throat. Given her preliminary, although limited research, the professor is hypothesizing cannabis smoking negatively affects wound healing through an increase in inflammation and a decrease in immune system function, both of which could also introduce other complications. Patients will be followed for 6 months from the time of their treatment, and self-reporting of cannabis use will be biochemically verified through blood tests. The patients will be split into 4 groups. Patients will be followed for 6 months from the time of their treatment, and self-reporting of cannabis use will be biochemically verified through blood tests. The patients will be split into these groups: those using cannabis and tobacco, those using tobacco only, and those who use neither. Now, according to the professor, they said, we will monitor each group patients for infections, bleeding, medical complications, and scar healing, and we will assess how they are using cannabis, whether it's smoking, vaping, or edibles, because they are very different in the effects they have. Now, beyond outcomes for head and neck cancer surgery may be implications for other types of surgery and conditions. Now, according to the professor, they say, I think there will be many opportunities for growth into other areas once we have established the framework of this study. The study, just so you know, is funded through a $100,000 clinical translation grant award from the Presbyterian Health Foundation. So there you go. Wound healing. Like I said, first of its kind study. I've never heard about it being used to heal wounds. I know I'm healing a wound in here on my wrist. I don't know if you can see it or not. There it is. I got scratched by the dog. It's still well, it's scabbing up, but it was bleeding for a bit, and we'll see what happens down the road. See if she heals right up, whether I'm scarred or not. Okay, let's move on to the next story, and this one's coming to me from MJ Biz Daily, and the headline on this story says, Supreme Court cases may force Trump administration to articulate cannabis policy. All right, because it's just all, we'll see in a few weeks area right now. Now, President Donald Trump's campaign trail support for medical cannabis and more recent promise to consider downgrading cannabis status under federal law means hope for the $32 billion legal industry. Meanwhile, Trump Justice Department attorneys are preparing to defend federal cannabis prohibition, as well as limiting cannabis users' right to own firearms before the U.S. Supreme Court. That's creating an apparent dissonance and leaving observers and an uncertain industry guessing as to the White House real feelings on the issue. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are really wondering what's the real feelings of the administration's issue. The legal cannabis industry is eagerly awaiting the latest advancement in stalled federal reform amid erroneous federal taxes and competition from the intoxicating hemp-derived THC products unleashed by the 2018 Farm Bill. Now, with Congress unable to pass reforms, other methods have been sought via the other two branches of the federal government. And the Supreme Court may hear at least two cannabis-related cases in its next term. One of them is U.S. versus Jimenez, in which a Texas man is challenging the federal government's refusal to allow cannabis users to legally possess firearms. They allow people who are drunk, that don't know what they're doing, to have a firearm, but not cannabis. And Canna Provisions versus Bondi, a challenge to the 2005 Supreme Court of the United States ruling that many in the industry believe could be a workaround to bypass Congress' inability to pass meaningful reform. Now, the latter is considered the biggest opportunity for the legalization movement in the cannabis industry for a landmark high court ruling in 20 years. At the same time, some legal observers tell MJ Biz Daily that a gun rights case may force the administration to articulate its views on cannabis or leave the Supreme Court to unravel the issue. And hovering all over that is Trump's pledge last week to give serious consideration to a Biden-era proposal to reclassify cannabis as a less dangerous substance under federal law, predicting that what he'll do is more difficult by a series of mixed messages, including key cabinet appointments such as anti-cannabis Drug Enforcement Administration chief and general embrace of law and order amid an immigration crackdown. Now, when he took office in January, Trump inherited the most significant federal cannabis policy question since the 1970 Controlled Substances Act. Should federal law be adjusted to reflect cannabis' wide acceptance as a medical treatment? Despite a campaign trail endorsement of both moving cannabis to Schedule III and a failed adult use cannabis voter initiative in Florida, where he's registered to vote, Trump has given little attention to the issue since his return to the White House. That's left observers to fill in gaps with what information is available and guess where the Justice Department's efforts to curtail gun rights for cannabis users and uphold cannabis prohibition via the courts indicate how the president may act. The ongoing court cases necessarily demand the Trump administration to respond to a variety of claims about the current state of the law, says Douglas Berman, a professor at the Morehouse College of Law at the University of State University. What lawyers for the Trump administration say in court could be a tea leaf to read in some sense, he added. At the same time, it shouldn't be overread. It's not as if the folks making cannabis policy in the White House are sitting down with the lawyers. Now, in the U.S. versus Jimenez, a case that the Justice Department appealed to the Supreme Court, a Texas man was charged with unlawfully possessing a pistol because he was a regular cannabis user. Federal law forbids anyone who is unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substance from possessing firearms. An appellate court threw out the government's case against Daniel Jimenez, declaring that the country's history of gun regulation does not support disarming a sober person solely for past substance use. Now, the Trump DOJ wants the Supreme Court to intervene and throw out the appellant decision and limit the Second Amendment rights of drug users and addicts. Rescheduling is unlikely to help Jimenez. Some critics and skeptics have tried to argue that moving cannabis to Schedule III would be detrimental to legal cannabis as it exists in the U.S. They say legal Schedule III drugs are available only via description and are available only after a lengthy Food Administration approval process. That would mean cannabis users would still be violating federal law and could be denied gun rights. The upshot is that the Supreme Court case would put the administration on record on this point of law. Now, according to Berman, he says this is the kind of case that presents the greatest likelihood that the Supreme Court will have to grapple with some aspects of modern cannabis realities. And given the Trump administration is clearly more pro-individual gun owner and more supporter of broader Second Amendment rights, then they have a harder time, or at least feel uncomfortable articulating a broad rule that says no Second Amendment rights for anybody and everybody who uses cannabis. Meanwhile, another case on cannabis may be headed to the nation's highest court. Chicago-based multi-state operator Verano Holdings and the three Massachusetts-based co-plaintiffs sued the U.S. Department of Justice in October of 23, alleging that the federal cannabis prohibition under the Controlled Substances Act is no longer constitutional. The Supreme Court on August the 15th granted a request by the Cannabis Companies Counsel super litigator David Boyce to be given until October to file his petition to be heard before the nation's highest court. Sorry, getting hiccups, people. That's after a federal appeals court in May rejected their constitutional challenge as expected. The goal all along was to bring the matter before the Supreme Court for the first consideration for cannabis prohibition since a 2005 case. Some observers caution that the Trump administration may defend laws currently on the books while simultaneously changing laws. Litigation is not necessarily a policy signal, says Harish Jain, co-founder of the Los Angeles-based consultancy Amanda Strategy, and an attorney who lectures on the University of Nevada. She says, DOJ attorneys are obligated to defend statuses on the books, while administrative agencies, through the rulemaking process, fashions new policies. Decisions around rescheduling appear to be unfolding on a separate administrative and political track than major litigation. Now, the Supreme Court cases may also compel the federal government to draw a key distinction between medical cannabis and adult use cannabis that makes up the majority of national industry. Trump has hinted at dividing line between adult use and medical cannabis. Some people like it. Some people hate it, the president said last week. Some people hate the whole concept of cannabis. It does bad for the children. It does bad for people who are older than children. That means adults. It's a very complicated subject, as you know, the subject of cannabis. I've heard great things having to do with medical, and I've heard bad things having to do with just about everything else. So there you go. All righty. We will report on what the Supreme Court decides when it is released. Okie, we're going on to the last story of the day. And this one is coming to me from the Cannabis Health News, which comes out of the UK. And the headline on it says, medical cannabis is promising treatment for women struggling to reach orgasm, the review finds. All righty, here we go. A new review has found consistent evidence that cannabis improves sexual function in women and should be considered as a first-line treatment for patients with female orgasm disorder. After reviewing findings from 16 peer-reviewed studies, including data from over 8,000 women, researchers have formally recommended that FOD, which is female orgasm disorder, be recognized as a qualifying condition for medical cannabis on prescription. Female orgasmic disorder, which is defined as a persistent or recurrent delay or absence of orgasm following sexual stimulation, now affects up to 72% of pre-menopausal women, a sharp rise from 42% reported in 2023. Or 2013, I'm sorry. Experts say with this increasing prevalence over the last decade, FOD poses a substantial public health concern, especially given the negative impact on women's lives, and say there is growing need for policy to recognize this condition worthy of treatment, research, and care. Now, according to the paper, women reporting FOD difficulty demonstrate higher rates of mental health conditions, including anxiety and depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and increased use of prescription medications. Despite this, no treatments have been approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration specifically to treat FOD, and research and innovation into potential therapeutic uses is said to be lacking. Now, the systematic review found that improved orgasm function, including increased frequency, intensity, quality, ease, satisfaction, and the ability to experience multiple orgasms per sexual encounter, was reported in all 9 studies that evaluated cannabis use before sexual activity. The authors state, cannabis appears to be a promising treatment for FOD difficulty, with the majority of studies reviewed reporting improvements in orgasm function and satisfaction among women who use cannabis. They go on to say that these benefits were observed across diverse study designs, populations, and cannabis use contexts. Given this growing body of evidence, FOD difficulty should be considered a qualifying condition for medical cannabis, and medical cannabis should be evaluated as a potential first-line treatment. Now, in 2024, results from the first RCT examining the effects of cannabis on sexual function in women demonstrated statistically significant improvements in orgasm function among gynecological cancer patients using cannabis-infused vaginal suppositories. While the findings suggest a strong association between cannabis use and improved orgasm function, further RCTs are needed. The authors say to establish causality and better understand the impact of dosage, timing, route of administration, and specific strains on FOD-related symptoms. To date, 3 U.S. states, Illinois, Connecticut, and New Mexico, have approved FOD as a qualifying condition for medical use, while Oregon will hold a public appeal to consider a petition in October. Now, Dr. Suzanne Mulvihill, a clinical sexologist and founder of the Women's Cannabis Project and Female Orgasm Research Institute, is leading the advocacy initiative to see FOD approved as a condition of treatment with medical cannabis in other jurisdictions, including the UK. Recognizing female orgasmic disorder in medical cannabis policy is both a public health imperative and a cultural recognition, she commented. And she says it affirms the woman's sexual health is important and worthy of treatment. There you go. That was 2 good stories to deal with women there today. The one earlier that I reported on, and this one here as well. So good stuff. Good stuff. All right. I haven't got any other news stories for today. That's it. I see we are at the top of the hour. Just so you know, there may or may not be a psychedelic and news report on Monday. It just comes down to a few things, and we'll know. You'll know Monday morning. If you see me, you know there's a show. If you don't see me, there isn't one. It's summer. It's holiday time, right? All right. Other than that, we'll see you next week sometime for sure. Other than that, you're watching Psychedelics Cannabis Educational News. And as I always say, do not educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate. And thanks to our sponsors, Limestone City, Hydroponics.ca, as well as Campbellford Lifestyle Shop and At-Eze.ca. Other than that, I guess I'm done. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.